Beginning our Daf Mesech Kesuvos Daf Ches, begin 6 lines up from the bottom of the Yomid, where we continue with the halacha of the next Mishnah, continuing the theme of the previous Mishnah regarding that a person is not believed to say regarding himself, so too regarding one's wife, Ishtek Gufay is also not believed to say regarding his wife, and that the Mishnah continues with a story related to a husband and a wife. This corresponds to today's daf. This is discussing today's daf are, can a husband testify for his wife, a various halachas of separation required for a husband and wife who become prohibited regarding what neighborhood they can live in and how close, proximity. The concept of neman lahod begodim asherah b'kotin regarding that a person is believed to say testimony when he's an adult about what he saw when he was a child. The limitations of that also. Based on process halacha of if there was a grave that was plowed over and now the bones are scattered, what the halachic status of that is regarding to rabbinic law. So begin the current daf Chav Zayin Mabei 6 lines up on the bottom of the Yomid. We will continue with the halacha of the next Mishnah, like we said, because we had concluded previously of the previous Mishnah, the Ein Odom Meir Alatzmoi. So the Mishnah brings a related story. The Omer of Zachariah ben Akatza, he said regarding his wife, he said, Ha'ma'oin hazeh, he says, this building, this dwelling place, which is a terminology of an oath, it's like swearing by the Beis Hamikdash. Her hand was not removed from my hand from the moment that the idol worshippers came into Yerushalayim and destroyed it. We know Rabbi Shloimy Schwartzberg is mentioned and by the Churban until they left. He says nothing happened to my wife. They said to him, "Ein odem meir alasman." A person cannot testify regarding himself, and therefore it's not going to help to testify regarding your wife. It's considered like as if you're testifying on yourself. So talking about the Brisa now, the postscript of the story. The Brisa says, "Va'afa pikin." Even so, that she became forbidden on him because he was a kohen, and therefore his hada, his testimony is not effective, and we're concerned that maybe she was nanas and therefore forbidden to him. Even so, yichel labayis b'chatzeir. So although his wife became forbidden to him, he designated a house for her in his courtyard. Now he was careful for halacha, so therefore as follows: Kshehi yaitza, when she was leaving, and he was in the courtyard, so she was going out, she was with the kids, she went out in front of her sons, so that the sons should be with them, that they're not secluded, because if the kids were going out, okay, we're going on a trip, and he's still at home doing some work, and they're in front and she's behind, the moment all the kids leave, she's secluded with him. So to avoid that, she went out first. When she was coming back home, now she came in at the end of the kids, so that it shouldn't be a moment with her and him in the courtyard and the kids on the outside, because it's forbidden for them to be secluded together. So that was this story regarding a shvuya. Now Abai had the following question: what's the halacha? Can you do the same thing if a kohen divorces his wife? What's the halacha? Are they allowed to dwell together in the same courtyard? What's the question? So Hasam who the b'shvuya there by the woman who is again the halacha of captivity, which is the same thing as when you have these armies that come and conquer a city and they just rape the women. So that's only a chashasha. We don't know for sure anything happened to this woman. So they were lenient to say, okay, Maisa, we have to treat you as forbidden to your husband because a ko'eshes ko'eshenense is a suva labala. We don't know, but okay, then we'll be lenient. We'll let him make a house for her in the same courtyard. But over here, where for sure she's biblically prohibited, where she's a grusha, maybe I would say, no, you're not allowed to make us a house in the same courtyard because of the problems you might run into. Like demolition, no, maybe there's no difference. No, a wife that's forbidden, just like the case of the shvuya. And so the same would be grusha, that you're allowed to make a house in the same courtyard. Says Tashmas being a raya, the time we learn the Brisa. The Brisa says, Hamagadash is ishter. If someone divorces his wife, like tinasei bishchinasei. So she shouldn't get married in his neighborhood because he recognizes all her body language and all hints, and they might come to, she recognizes his hints, and they might come to sin together. We don't want them to be in the same neighborhood. Now, continues the Gemara on the top of Chav Chasam and Aleph. Now, if he was a kohen, so not only should she not live in the same neighborhood, like she even if she didn't get married, they shouldn't live in the same. A Mavai was many chatzeiros together in the same area because he might not be with her, and the kohen is forbidden in the grusha. A Yisrael, on the other hand, as long as she didn't get married, she could live in the same neighborhood. Which, as Tesa points out, that that we said a kohen cannot live with her in the same alleyway is because since she's single, so it's more of a lesser type of a problem for him. So he might come to be ball out. If she got married, then you don't have to distance only but regarding the neighborhood, which is 3 houses, because once she gets married, that is chamer for the kohen. And in Hoya Kfar Katan, it was a small village. So this was such a story. They said Kfar Katan nidin kishchuna, that a small village has the same halacha like a neighborhood. So, like we said, regarding anyone who divorces his wife, they shouldn't live in the same neighborhood, which is 3 houses. So that's the same thing for a village. A kohen is more severe. That we said that because that's a bona fide isser with a kohen with a grusha, so they shouldn't even live in the same mother. But al kapanim, we answered our question that we see that it's going to be usher by the grusha for him to make a house in our chatzar. It's only by the shvuya. Okay, shvuya hikilu. We don't know really if she's even forbidden anyway. We have to be chayshish. But al kapanim, he can make a house for her in the courtyard. But a real grusha, that's usher for him to make and to live even in the same mavli as his grusha. Now the question is, however, who gets pushed from who? Meaning they can't both live in the same neighborhood. Who has to move out of the neighborhood because they can't be in the same one? So the Tashmat finger Raya, the telling in the Brisa. He nitches mipanav. She gets rejected from him. But he does not get rejected from her. Says the Brisa. But if it was her courtyard, who nitcha mipaneha? Meaning if it's her estate, then he has to move out and for her. So we answer the question, we see that she has to move out of town and not him. Now, Ibailu did the following question. What's the halacha if it was both their courtyards? What would the halacha be then over there? Moses Tashma, let's bring the rice we brought before. We said, he nitches mipanav. She gets rejected from him. So, what's the case talking about? If it's his courtyard, Pshita, obviously he owns the property, she has to move out. So when you say her courtyard, how could you say that she has to move out? He gets rejected from her. Elolav, obviously, Kaigav must be talking about the case where it's Chatzah Shloshneim. They bought it together, the property was under both of their names. And therefore we see still, even over there, he nitches mipanav, she has to move out. So the Gemara said, no, not necessarily. Then with the Agar Megar, maybe they were renting. So no one owned it. No one owned it. So then, okay, it's up in the air. Then we said she has to move out. But maybe if they both owned it, maybe that would not be the case. So the Gemara says, so my Habalah, so what's the conclusion regarding this question? The Gemara says, Tashmat's being arrived from a pasuk in Yeshaya. Pasuk says, Hina Hashem metal telecha. Hashem is going to move you around, taltela gaver, a wandering of a man. What is that? What's that curse of Hashem is going to make us wander like a man? Because Amar Rabbi says, "Tuli the gavra kosher itza." A wandering man is worse than that of a woman. So from that pasuk, we could infer that it must be that she has to move out and not him. Because for the man, him to move out that's mamash yisurim. But for her, okay, she'll find another place, and therefore that's the right that he nitches mipanav even with his chatzar shalshneim. Now the Gemara continues, Tanavon Abraisa, that continues regarding this idea of the relationship that a husband and wife has after the divorce, specifically regarding this of kahuna. The Braisa says, Love himena. If he borrowed from her when they were still married, the husband borrowed from the wife, the nichsi aviha, meaning what do you mean? Everything what the wife has is the husband's. No, there's something called nichsi melug. Nichsi melug is property that she owns. The husband just gets to use its utility. And we're talking about a kohen that divorced his wife. So halacha is eina nefras. So she cannot collect from him what he owes her now that they're divorced by herself, because we don't want them to get close by having these conversations. Elal de achar. She could only collect through a third party, through someone else. Because again, we don't want them, this is related to the idea, we don't want them living in the same neighborhoods, we don't want them to get too close because the kohen is forbidden in a grusha, issa deraisa. Amar Sheshes, he said to be also come on the dina, and if they come in front of us for a court case, we don't address them because they're coming together as like a couple, they're coming together, we don't want to encourage that. Papa, he says shamuti mishamtinu, he says that we excommunicate them. He says, we also give them lashes. Now, however, the Gemara qualifies this teaching. It says, Amr Rav Nachman, it says, Tana ba'aval Rabasi. We learned in the Masechta called Abel Rabasi, the Great Mourning, which is called Masechta Smachis, that qualifies the teachings that B'medmim, when we say this, is Shidnizgashim and Nisuin, if she was divorced from marriage, they had been married, they were a couple, and then they get divorced, we don't want them to be near each other. But if they were only engaged and got divorced, then she could collect from him by herself, because he's not so friendly and so intimate with her, because they were never married. So then we're not concerned that if they're going to have a shmooze and says, "Oh, you owe me $100, I gotta pay you back $50." Blah blah blah. Well, we're not concerned for that. But if it was married, then it would be. Now the Gemara actually illustrates this halacha with a story. Now, who others? There was a chatan. There was someone who was engaged, who was a kohen, Baruch Sasai, and the girl that he was engaged to, that the Asl Kamei did Rav, meaning they had separated, they had gotten divorced from their engagement. They came in front of the Rav. So Yasser Rav B'Masa come in. Rav B'Masa was sitting in front of Rava when this couple, this ex-couple, came in front of him. So Uki Rava Shlucha Ben Tayyur. So Rava made Rav B'Masa as an agent between the two parties, between the ex-cousin and the ex-couple. So I'm like, Rav B'Masa says, what do you mean? Rav Nachman said, we just quoted this a moment ago. Tana Be'ebu Rabasi B'Chulu. We learned that from Arison, she could collect it by herself straight from him. So what are you making me as an agent between them? So Malay said to him, yeah, but I saw that this couple, they were very, very friendly. They recognized each other with his wink and his with his fingers, and Rashi says a French word of privets. It sounds like privates, like, these people, they were very intimate with each other. And therefore, I didn't want them going ahead and conversing together because of the problems that might cause. That's one version of the story.
How do you break up Eros with a get?
Yes, I'm saying it's not like in our days when we just have like a shidduch. They have a bona fide kedushin that you give a ring, and then 12 months later they got married. So yeah, it's a regular get. It's a regular divorce from kedushin. Now, those that say the story was just slightly different. No, Rav actually did not make him an agent between them. That on the Rav Masni says, let the master make me an agent between them. Amalei, so Rav said, what do you mean? Rav Nachman says, that you don't have to have an agent when they was broken up from engagement. That Amalei, that's what Rav Masni responded. He says, well, that's when they're not so intimate. This guy and this girl, these are very friendly the way they're talking, and therefore it's not appropriate for them, even from engagement, to go ahead and converse together, and therefore making an agent to be the intermediary between the two. I get to now look at the next Mishnah, continuing on the theme of Edus that we've spoken about in prior Mishnayos regarding the witness's testimony. So on that, the Mishnah segues into other halachas of Edus. Now the following individuals, or the following situations, they're believed to testify when they're adults, to say what they saw when they were small. Meaning, although Midaraisa, and Tais discusses in detail regarding, but to some extent, Edus cotton as puzzle, but the following cases the Gemara is going to describe, they're only dealing with a Surah Drabanan, so therefore Hemnu Rabbanan B'Drabanan. So the following halachas, as we'll go through in detail in the Gemara, that these are rabbinic law, so therefore when they're older, they're believed to say what they saw when they were younger. For example, a person believed to say, this is my father's handwriting. And thus, they can validate a document based on what he's saying, even though his father died when he was very young. And this was the handwriting, this is the signature of my teacher. This is the handwriting of my brother. I remember that this woman, that she went out with a hinuma, which is like we said about decking, which is a sign that she got married as a basula, and thus her ksub is 200. The Gemara said her the parent. Or the Bereshim Peruah, her hair was uncovered. Again, another sign that she was a basula. Shaya ish pleni yotzim beis sefer. I know when we were young boys together learning in yeshiva that the Gemara is going to explain the reason of all these halachas, that he went out lit for lechel b'truma. His tati took him to table him to eat truma. Or that he got a portion with us by the granary, which obviously is testifying that he's a kain. Or let's say he's saying that this area is a beis hapras. Like Taisus says, means the boundaries are limited over here of the beis hapras. It's only up until here, which will explain the Gemara what a Beis HaPras is. But kind of Yinibar Shabbos or a different halacha. Up until here is where we used to go on Shabbos regarding the halachas of Tchum. That's what he's believed to say. Aval, but ein adam neman loim. A person is not believed to say, because as the Gemara is going to explain, these things are extracting money. For extracting money, you need to have a bona fide two witnesses. What's with halacha of ksuba? And the Gemara will explain. We just said that he could say that she was a basula, that she yatzes behinuma rishon berua. That's also extracting her to get 200 mana from the husband versus 100. I think we'll say that no, that's actually Reiv Nashim Basulasness. Most women are married as Basulas, so it's not really even it's a Gila Milsa Ba'alma, as the Gemara will explain. But if you want to say, as the following idea is, to extract money, that would require a bona fide edus. So a person not believed to say, that to say what he was younger, to say now, the derech hayil playing oh, that person, he had a path through this area, or a station and eulogy that person had in this place, meaning that he had a place over here to eulogize his dead relatives when they would take them to his cemetery to make over there what's called mamados and meshabos, where they would do 7 times for a dead person. They go and they stop, and they go and they stop. No, a person not believed to say because he's taking monetary rights of whoever is the owner. For that, you need to have a bona fide aegis. Now, the Gemara qualifies. I'm going to put Rabbi Shloimy. It says this that we're saying in the Mishnah that a person is believed to say when he's older what he saw when he was younger. So he says, "V'hu sheyesh gadol imay." This is if he has an adult with him, which the Tosfos Rid over here on the page he explains. He says you need to have 2 witnesses to testify that this is their signature, as the Gemara had previously said. Where the Rabbanan disagree with Rabbi is only when he says this is my handwriting. When he says this is my friend's handwriting, the Rabbanan agree that you need to have 2 witnesses on every single signature. So what Rabbi is saying over here is that specifically when you have one child to say when he was a child, they're validating, but not to have 2 children. Meaning if they're both testifying when they're adults, what they saw when they were younger, they're not going to be believed. You need to have one of them to be an adult that's testifying regarding what this other one saw when he was a minor. That's what Rabbi Yeshua is qualifying, that you have to have a gadol with him. Now, there were 3 cases that we spoke about. He said, this is my father's handwriting, this is my teacher's handwriting, and this is my brother's. So the Gemara says we need to say all 3 cases. Why? The Yeshmin of had we said that he's believed regarding his father's handwriting, because he frequented by him. And therefore, when he was a young boy, he was always looking what his father was writing. But his teacher not, so maybe he wouldn't be believed. Yeshmin Rabbi had we said the teacher, because he has the awe of his Rebbe, and when his Rebbe wrote one letter, he looked at it and he was analyzing it, and therefore maybe he's remembering that. But the father is not such an awe of his father, maybe he wouldn't remember. So you have to say the case of the father. Yeshmin had we said the 2 cases of father and the Rebbe, I would say, yeah, that's where you believe. Other than the father because you're always around him, but Abba Disley Masa and the Rebbe because you have the awe. Regarding his brother, but the brother you don't have fear, and you're not around him all the time. I would say you're not believed when you're adult to say what you remember as a child. That's what I'm coming to tell you that since verifying the documents are rabbinic, because biblically you don't need to verify, which qualifies exactly what that would mean. But like Rosh Hashanah and Daf Yomi, when your witness is on the document, Nasi Commission not going to do this in business, like it's already been verified, the testimony in the court. So the whole halacha of verifying the signature is only rabbinic. So as this is the klal of our whole Mishnah, nu rabbanon v'drabbanon. The rabbis believed him by rabbinic law, meaning something that's rabbinic, they believed him, and that's not uprooting a biblical halacha because heimam or beheimam. They said that you need to have kiyum shtars. And they said that we're going to validate it through such a person that was a child and now is an adult. Although generally we won't believe a child, even as an adult, what he saw as a child. But for rabbinic law, we're going to allow this rabbinic halacha of believing this person to say what he saw as a child. Next part of the Mishnah was Zachar Yisub Aplainus. So again, we're going to try to illustrate for each one of these cases why are we believing this guy to say what he saw when he was a child. So Zachar Yisub Aplainus. He says, I remember that woman. Yeah, I was 5 years old, and she had to be Numa Bereshapruah. And I was there by the Badakin, and I saw that her hair was uncovered, and therefore she was a Basula. So in the Mishnah we said he's believed. Says Gemara, my time, what's the reason? And the reason why the Gemara is asking what's the reason is because the end of the Mishnah ends off that when you're coming to extract money, you're not believed. You need a bona fide testimony. And here it's extracting money from her husband that she's getting divorced from, let's say, who instead of getting 100, she's going to get 200 because you're saying she was a basula. So why do we believe him? Says the Gemara, because since most women, basulisness is when they get married, are getting married as a virgin, so Gila Milsa Ba'alma, who is just revealing something. In other words, you don't really need Eidos. It's just to publicize that the judgment is being done without any contesting, and therefore we would assume that she was a basula generally, and therefore his testimony is enough even to say what he said as a child. We said in the Mishnah, the next case was a person is believed to say what he saw when he was younger was I remember Taka when I was in 3rd grade, and that boy would come out of yeshiva, litva lecha b'truma. His father would take him to the mikveh, and that he would eat truma that evening. And therefore, that he believed to now verify this person to be able to eat truma that is a kain. Says he, how do you know? Maybe he was the eved of a kain. We know the kinyi kasboy of a kain is also able to eat truma, not just the family of the kain, also whatever the kain acquires. Maybe he's a slave, the knecht from a kain, and maybe that's why he was able to eat truma. Says the Gemara, Messiah Levi Shubba Levi. So obviously this supports Rabbi Shubba Levi. Because Rabbi Shubba Levi says, Asla Adam Shilam is Abdi Torah. So forbidden to teach your slave Torah. And here, the story was that he was coming out of Cheder. And therefore, he's not allowed to teach him Torah. So that's how you know that he wasn't an Eved. Therefore, it must be that he was the son, and therefore he's a kain. Says he, is that really so that you're not allowed to teach your Eved Torah? Or the time you learn the Bryce that says, Love him if the master borrowed money from the slave gets his stipend from the master. The man's like, forgot to take my wallet. And at the gas station, he's like, okay, can I borrow $20 from you? So he borrows him. Or another case, or if the master makes him as a getintam and base, apotropos. He makes him in charge, he gives him his assets to go ahead and do business, to buy and to sell. Or if the slave puts on tefillin in front of his master. Or another case, he lanes 3 psukim in shul. All these things are not going to have him go out free. In other words, we don't say, if they didn't free him, he wouldn't be borrowing money from him. He wouldn't let him do things that are like free men type of things. We don't say that. The fact that he lane 3 psukim or that he put on tefillin, etc., is not a raya that he must be a free person. But one thing we see from this brisa is that you can have an Eved learning Torah. You said if he lanes 3 psukim in shul, you're not saying he's a free man that he must have freed him. So what do you mean? So you see that the Eved is learning Torah. I thought you said that Eved, you can't have him learning Torah. And here you see that it could be an Eved laning 3 psukim from the Torah. Says Gemara, yeah, but Hasan the Ikri Eved Midaita. There the slave was reading it on his own. The master doesn't have to stop him. That's not indicative that he freed him. Kikarmina, when did we say that obviously he's not an Eved? Is because the Kanoig Be'minik Bonam. He was treating him like a son. He sent him to Cheder. So that's going to be forbidden. And therefore that was the raya that he must be a kain and not an Eved for a kain. The next time the kid says, why send me to Cheder? He says, I can treat you like an Eved. I wouldn't send you to Cheder. But you're like a son. And if I send you to, only sons could go to Cheder and Eved cannot go to Cheder. So Akaponim, that at least answers that question regarding how we know that it wasn't an Eved of a kain. Is because if it was Eved a kain, then he wouldn't be sending him to Cheder. Now he said in the Mishnah, the next case was that Litful Lecha, I mean part of this case was Litful Lecha B'Truma. That he's saying that I remember when he took him out of yeshiva to tell him to eat truma. So the Gemara qualifies because it's the theme of all these cases of the Mishnah B'Truma D'Rabbanan. Meaning, for example, the truma of Chutz La'aretz or Peiros, meaning if it's not Dogan Tidish V'Yitzar, we're believing this guy when he's 16, let's say, to say, I remember when I was in 4th grade, only to believe him for these things that you could feed it based on what he's saying, but not regarding biblical truma, because like we said, regarding biblical truma, regarding biblical law, we don't believe someone what he said when he was younger. It's only for regarding rabbinic truma. Now, we said in the Mishnah, the next case that we believe him for, which is also regarding truma, is I remember Taka when I was 7, that this guy used to come with us and he would get his shears by the granary for truma. You're also going to ask the same question. How do you know that when he was getting a chelik by the goyim, that means to say that he was a kohen, v'dilma eved kohen, or maybe he was a slave of the kohen, a 7-year-old slave, and he would come with his overalls and get the truma because he's eved kohen. How do you know? How are you proving that he's a kohen himself? Says the Gemara, it's not Kamandama. Obviously, this is teaching us like the one who says, Ein chelken truma le'eved, that we don't give a portion of truma to the slave, only if the master is with him. And therefore, if he's coming by himself, must be that he is a ben kohen or a kohen, not an eved kohen. And because we're going like that opinion, you don't give a portion of truma to the eved himself. It's not like we're in the brisa. The beginning of that brisa says a case if you have a woman, a kohenes, that was giving birth at the same time as our maidservant, and the lights go out, the generators blow, everything goes out, and the babies are screaming, the babies are being born, and now they don't know who's baby. So what happens is, one is a kohen, one's an eved kohen. So they both go out to the granary and they both together take one portion. Why? Because in chalken truma le'eved, you can't give a portion of truma to the slave. Unless his master's with him, to Rabbi Yehuda. So therefore, if one of them is going to go on his own, they're not going to give him a portion because maybe that's going to establish him as a kohen, and maybe he's an eved. So because of that, as we're going to explain in a moment, the reason why they wouldn't give it to the eved on his own is because getting a chelik of truma would elevate you to the status of yuchasin. So Rabbi Yehuda says, okay, these two young men cannot come on their own. They have to come together because one of them is the eved and one of them is the rabbi, and only then could they get it. Rabbi Yisrael says no. The guy could say as follows: look, if I'm a kohen, give it to me because of myself. If I'm a slave of a kohen, give it to me because of my master. Either way, I deserve to get a portion. So he could come on his own. So the Gemara explains what's the reasoning for their machlekes. Is that for the following rationale. In the place of Rabbi Yehuda, they would elevate a person from his portion of truma to the status of yichus as a kohen for marriage, and that's why they said that you cannot be chelik truma le'eved, because if he gets, they're going to think he's a real kohen for yichus purposes. In the place of Rabbi Yesi, they wouldn't elevate you from a chelik truma le'yuchasin. So getting truma, no one would make you into regular kohen. Oh, so then we could give it to you as an eved kohen too, because what's the problem? You anyways deserve to eat it. No one's going to elevate you into status. So that's the explanation of the machlekes. And again, that's the reason why we're saying our Mishnah must be going like Rabbi Yehuda, where you cannot be chelik truma le'eved, and that's why if he remembers when he was a young boy, the chelik al-garin, he would be elevated to the status of a kohen because eved kohen would not be able to get it. And actually, the Gemara says, Tanya, interesting brisa. I remember Lazar ben Abisi says, "Miyamai lo hadati." Says, I never said testimony. Nevezish mensch, whatever. I never testified on anything. Not saying that's what he said, but sometimes I didn't testify. The one time I said I testified, and the hell ever couldn't alpi. And because of what I testified, they made an eved into a kohen based on what I said. So the Gemara first of all has a problem with the story. Hello, you think they really elevated an eved to be a kohen based on what he said? If now we know the cloud, if the animals are the righteous, in a Kaddish Baruch Hu, maybe it's like Yodam, the Kaddish Baruch Hu does not cause a stumbling block for the animals of the righteous. As the famous story of the donkey of Princess Binyar, and Aleph, that the donkey didn't want to eat something that wasn't tight. So I think the righteous all the more so, which Taisa addresses and he says, I explained it somewhere else. Therefore, it's a question if you should really have this girsa, because it's well known that this concept is only regarding eating, not kosher. Eating things that are not appropriate. Here it wasn't regarding eating. On the other hand, you could say it was regarding eating because it was regarding eating of his slave. But be that as it may, how could it be that he elevated Eved to Kuna? Rather, no, big shulahalas Eved to Kunalpi. They wanted to elevate the Eved to Kunalpi, and we stepped in and we were able to show that's not the case. So the Gemara explains what happened, what was the mistake with his testimony. Because what happened was, Chazah ba'asid Rabbi Yesi, he saw in the location of Rabbi Yesi that they were giving this person a portion of truma by the granary. The problem is, in the place of Rabbi Yesi, they gave to an eved of a kohen because they weren't malal liyuchasin. But then, where did he testify? In the place of Rabbi Yehuda, there they wouldn't give a portion of truma to the eved of Kana. So he went to the other place and testified that I saw that he got a chelik of truma by the gairin. That's going to elevate him in that place to a place of yichus, and that was because of his testimony that he one time said. And again, that's the understanding, at least halacha of our Mishnah, that if he's saying this halacha of Truma that he said that he saw him when he was younger, that he would join us in accepting Truma in the field, that we're saying is a testimony that's going to be believed, because it's going like the Rabbi Huda who said that they wouldn't give out to an Eved, and if he got a portion, must have been that it was kind. The next case that we're saying that a person is believed is regarding that Let's say he says, I remember as a child that this area is a Beis HaPras. What's a Beis HaPras? So if someone, let's say there's a grave, and someone is plowing over the grave, so that makes it into the Beis HaPras. Pras is from the word of like a broken piece. Broken piece means we're talking about the bones over here, at least according to one interpretation. It's the broken bones, which goes for an area of 100 amas. Because that's how Chazal evaluated, that the plow will scatter the bones of the dead person for an area of 100 amas. Now, problem is, if someone's coming into this field now, he might be touching, or he might cause to move the bone that's the size of a barley corn, which contaminates by touching or by carrying it. So that's what we're saying regarding the person is believed to say that this area is a Beis HaPras, which says the Gemara my time, or what's the reason why he's believed, which as Tais explained, he's limiting the area. He's believed in a leniency. So what's the reason? So it says the Gemara, because Beis HaPras did above. The Beis HaPras is a rabbinic halacha. And like we said all along, all these halachas are illustrating that a person is believed as an adult to say what he was as a child regarding rabbinic halacha. How do we see that this Beis HaPras is rabbinic halacha? Because I remember reading Shmuel, he says, a person could blow when he's walking in the Beis HaPras and walk through, and he could rely on that, because if there's an actual bone, he'll see it. If it's not, if it's so small, he's going to be blowing, it's going to blow away. Says Rashi, what's the halacha of being mal on it? You might be walking over it, forget about touching it. That's a problem of Tumas Mace. That's the rest we're not concerned, because a bone the size of a barley corn does not contaminate with leaning over it as an oil until it's either the spine or a complete skull or most of the bones of the quantity or the structure of the human skeleton. Only then does it have the halacha of Tumas Ayah. So all it could have is maga or masa. That we're not concerned, because if you blow, you're going to be moving whatever small tiny bones there are as you're walking. Also Rabbi Huda Bar Ami B'Shmei Rabbi Huda, he says Beis HaPras or Nidish. If you have this Beis HaPras, again, which was the grave was plowed over, so if it got trampled a lot by many feet already, so tar, then that area is going to be tar. We suspend that in a lenient way. My time, what's the reason? Because it's not possible that if there was a bone the size of a barley corn, that wasn't pulverized already with people stepping on it, that it should be less than that measurement. So again, Rashi says that you see from this, again, the same idea, that must be, it's only rabbinic concern. Because of biblical law, we wouldn't be so lenient to assume this, and therefore, again, since it's a rabbinic halacha, the whole halacha based on pras, that's why we're saying that the person is believed to say when he's an adult, what he saw as a child, all these halachas fit into this category of rabbinic halacha. The next case was, he's believed to say, Ba'ad kan yina boin b'Shabbos. This is where we used to come up until on Shabbos. I remember when we were a kid, we would walk, and this is ad kan, hatchim. So the Gemara explains, again, that there's a machlekes brought in Shas, if the laws of Tchum of the 2,000 amas beyond your Shabbos residence, if that's rabbinic or biblical, must be that the Tana of the Mishnah holds that it's rabbinic, and therefore he's believed to say, again, because biblical would say he wouldn't be believed. Now, the Mishnah concluded by saying, but it's not believed to say, oh, that I remember this guy, everyone knows that Yankala, the milkman, had a path through this area, or the Rabbi Lazar had Maimud of Mispah, that he had a place of a station and a eulogy in this place, but that is not believed to say. Says my time, what's the reason? Because when you want to extract money for that, we don't extract only if we had two Alpishnaim Eidim Yokadav, we have to have two bona fide witnesses for that. Now, relating to the halacha, the Mishnah, so the Gemara says, Tana Bavlina Braisa, Neman Hatinik. The child is believed to testify when he becomes an adult, what he saw as a minor, which was this theme of our Mishnah. Limit to say, but here we bring other cases. This is what my father told me. That family is tar, is pure, and that family is tamei, is impure. So the Gemara wonders, do you really entertain to say his father told him this family is pure and this family is impure? What are you saying? What does pure and impure have to do with families? Ella rather, this family is valid, and this family is invalid. I mean, there's a psul in the family, there's some type of a psul in the yichus in the family. So therefore, to stay away from that family. Moreover, related to this idea, we ate in the ktsatsa, which we must explain at the end, what does this mean, ktsatsa? Shalbas plaini laplaini. When the daughter of that man married that man, meaning when this shidduch happened, we ate from this ktsatsa, which is a disgrace, which related to this mishpacha being puzzle. And a different thing he could testify, that we went and we used to bring our challah, which is the portion of matnas kuna, 1/24th of the dough that's given to the kohen, and the other matanas hakuna we give to that person, the kohen. He's believed to say that, to testify that that person is a kohen. But qualifies the brisa, this is all of the atzma. This is only if the child's testifying that my father sent me to bring the challah matanas to that kohen. But he's not believed to say that it was through someone else. Now, Kulon says the brisa, all these cases, if he was not Jewish and then he converted and he's testifying, he says, oh yeah, when I was in the Lower East Side, I remember all these things when I was not Jewish, and then he's testifying now when he really converted about what he saw when he was not Jewish. Or Eved ben Ishtafa, let's say he was a slave and then he was freed, so ain't no money. For all these things, he's not believed to say of the halachic status of these things. Now, however, the ain't no money, he's not believed to say from when he was a child, like we said in the Mishnah, that there was a path for this person in this area, and that there was a station and a eulogy for this person in this place, but that is not believed. The price ends over. He says, they are believed. The Gemara says, which case is Birchim going on? If it's going the last case that we just said regarding to say that this guy had a path through this person's property or for these eulogies, how could that be? That's extracting money. No one disagreed that you have to have two bona fide witnesses. Elevation is going on the Reisha. The Reisha was talking about that to say that this family had the psul, and regarding all these other halachas of we ate from the ktsatsa bas plain leplaini. That is where we're having machlekes. The Tanakama said, all of these situations, if he was not Jewish and he converted, or Evan the Shtacher, is not believe, and that Gemara says no one that believe. So that says, what are they disagreeing about? So the Gemara explains, Tanakama held, given the Eibuk HaChavim, since he was not Jewish at the time, Labadai, he wasn't so precise. He's not checking into these things regarding Jewish law to know and ascertain the veracity, and therefore he's not believing. He holds no, keeping the Daita Ligayure, since his intention is to convert, always felt spiritual already, even as a little kid, always looked at the Jews in an interesting way, and so made a daik, so therefore he would be particular and would be careful, and therefore what he's saying is believed. But the Gemara ends off by explaining one of the cases that we said that he's believed as an adult to say what he saw as a child, that we ate from the ktsatsa of Bas Plain, when that shidduch happened, when this girl was getting married to that guy, we ate from the ktsatsa. Says my ktsatsa that this adult is testifying. Turn around like we learned in the brisa. Ktsatsa, what is this ktsatsa? So if you have one of the brothers, he's marrying a woman that's not appropriate for him, an unworthy woman. So born by the mishpacha, so the family members come along, and they bring a barrel full of produce, and they break it open in the middle of the street. So they don't like one of these, the protesters they like with the placards and all the things. They come there, they say like this. Everyone's taking pictures. Say, our brothers, the Jewish people, listen up. Our brother, that brother, Nasa Isha Shein against life, is marrying a woman that's not appropriate for him. And we're afraid maybe his children, his descendants are going to get mixed up with our descendants. It has the same name and it's from the same family. Come and take for yourself a sample, a sign, a memory, a memento, for the future generations, that his children are not going to mix up with our children. And this is the ketzatsa that the child is believed to testify to say that I was there. We got instead of the bencher, we got that time. We got this type of memento from this barrel of the produce that was to remember. This was an unworthy shidduch, and that the family was nothing to do with this brother, turn to second parak in Kesuvos Daf, which spoke about these ideas about a woman becoming widowed and regarding the testimony, regarding believing if her status, regarding marriage, and regarding her tahara process, and so on and so forth. I think it's any time.
This was talking